Good evening and welcome to Taking the Initiative. I'm Reverend Bill Kunze, your host here every week for conversations with leaders in our communities, with executives and leaders of people in the nonprofit sector that are making our communities better places to live and to work. We love to hear from you. So go to our website, www.takingtheinitiative.com, and you can contact me, give us ideas and feedback, and you can see all of our shows from the last 2 or 3 years if you missed one week and haven't seen them all. You know, for nearly 2 decades, I worked at places that provided soup kitchen programs, and I can tell you of all the heartbreaking stories and situations that I heard about and encountered, nothing is worse than talking to a teenager at a place like that and finding out that they are homeless, that they're living in an abandoned place, maybe moving around from friend to friend or whatever. But I am happy that throughout our entire viewing area, there is an agency that is serving the needs and providing shelter for homeless teenagers. So we'll be talking about that, the Valley Youth House programs, as soon as we come back after these messages. Welcome back. Over the years, I've had several conversations here on Taking the Initiative with leaders of Valley Youth House, but never with my guest this evening, and that's because Annette Duranso is the newly installed president and CEO of Valley Youth House. Annette Duranso grew up near Detroit, has worked for the Department of Health and Human Services, and now leads 350 employees in some dozen locations of Valley Youth House throughout Eastern Pennsylvania. It's great to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So I appreciate the time for myself to be able to talk about Valley Youth House and all the good work we're doing.
But first, I'd like you to talk about yourself a little bit. Why do you do the kind of professional work that you do? What gives you the most satisfaction in your work?
I think, first of all, I'm a mom, so I realize how difficult it is to raise kids. And I think that having teenagers myself, it is even increasingly difficult. And many times in my parenthood, I really needed help and wanted someone to talk with, and I'm sure my kids needed that as well. And we were able to muddle through. We had 2 parents working hard for our kids, and not all families are afforded that. So I think that's where the gist of my work comes from, is really my own upbringing of my own kids. And I'm a social worker, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, by training. So you put those 2 things together and it's good stuff.
You bring an experience that's national, a perspective that's broad because of your other professional work. I don't know, can you talk a little bit about, with your extensive experience at Valley Youth House of a month or 2 now, but can you talk a little bit about youth homelessness or in general and in this region where you're serving now?
Right, so I think that's an interesting question, and I'm not from the Lehigh Valley, so
Yes.
I'm just getting initiated kind of into the diverse population that we have here. Much of it reminds me actually of Detroit, with kind of the auto industry coming in and out, and I know that's what happened with Bethlehem Steel. So the population is similar to me, and I can draw from that. On a national perspective, though, homelessness, there's only over 1 million youth that are homeless at any one time. The difference, though, is that the youth are dealing with gang issues and drug issues much more prevalent than they were in the early years when Valley Youth House first started. We have our 40th anniversary this year, and the inception of Valley Youth House was really around providing shelter for homeless youth. Into doing outreach, and the youth were on the streets. Now we find youth in abandoned buildings, we find youth couch surfing from friend to friend. So sometimes you don't see them on the streets like you might have maybe in the 70s, but that doesn't mean they're not there.
That's exactly my experience, as I mentioned in the beginning of staying in homeless places. Sometimes they seem to wander to the encampments as well.
Right.
And mental health issues, those kind of things, is that another overlay?
Absolutely. And when you add the mental health issues and then them self-medicating by utilizing drugs, and then they're really on the fringe of society normally. And you're exactly right. What's interesting in the Lehigh Valley, I think, is the encampments and them going actually into the woods and setting up their own communities. We have a synergy project actually that does outreach specifically to those particular areas using mountain bikes and or other vehicles to be able to get to those youth, which is unique.
So your
our
staff
areas.
is on mountain bikes going off into...
Absolutely, yeah. They have very creative ways of being able to reach those youth. They have strong connections with them to be able... Sometimes the youth are not ready to come into shelter, and that's okay, but we want them safe, and we want them connected, and we want them to know they have resources out there so that when they're ready, we're there for them.
That synergy program, I've read about that. Is that in Bucks County?
It is in Bucks County,
primarily?
absolutely, yeah.
Which kind of illustrates the broad geographic range that you serve.
Yeah, and we are looking to start up outreach programs in other areas that might look more in Allentown. Obviously, maybe it wouldn't be in an encampment, but it might be reaching out to strategic locations that youth would hang out in the streets of Allentown and or Bethlehem or Easton. So it's definitely an area in which we're growing, and we want to locate those youth. And again, even if they don't want to come into shelter, we can offer them services, counseling, or ancillary products that they might need to keep them safe at the moment.
How about causes or things that are behind homelessness among you? How do you define youth? Are you talking about sort of teenagers or and then what's causing this?
Right. So it's interesting because years ago youth kind of ended at the age of 18.
Yeah.
It's not so now. It's very hard for a youth, let alone a homeless youth, to sustain some type of housing and to be self-sufficient at the age of 18. So when we talk about youth, we're actually going to the age of 24 now when we talk about an adolescent or youth.
And what's the low end?
The low end would probably be maybe 11 or 12, I would say. So our services go, when we're talking about an adolescent, to that that vast age difference. So you're certainly going to provide services to an 11-year-old quite differently than you would to a young, to an older adolescent that would be 21 or 22 and has legal rights. But we span those services, and we specialize in knowing what each of those age groups need specifically. That's what's so unique about Valley Youth House.
And what's propelling the homelessness in that population? And does it correlate to anything else, like the economy or poverty, or does it cut across all that?
I would say it ultimately goes back to family dynamics and their ability to connect and have a relationship with their parents. Underlying issues to that, though, are the parents. It could be their lack of ability to provide stable housing. So that could go back to their economic situation. Have they lost their job? Are they in stress and turmoil themselves, which then can propel the youth to be in stress and turmoil? So when we work with youth, we work with the family as well. So if there's systemic family issues, such as poverty, mental health, drugs and alcohol, we reach the family as well to reconnect that youth and try and make the entire unit more self-sufficient, more healthy, more positive. That's the amazing thing about Valley Youth House, is we don't just singular out one particular issue with one particular youth, but we work in a holistic manner, reaching out to the family, reaching out to all of the needs that that youth and family might have.
Is that or something else, what attracted you most to want to pick up your last position was in Delaware, is that right?
Well, I had an office in Philadelphia predominantly, and I worked on national issues around homelessness and policy issues.
So what brought you to Valley Youth House?
I funded Valley Youth House on that level, and so I knew the quality of services. I worked with their staff around their shelter programs, around the Synergy Project, around our transitional living programs for older adolescents. So one, I knew the quality of programs, and two, I knew the positive outcomes. The values and culture with Valley Youth House were similar to mine, and it was a natural fit.
Where do you find the most personal reward in the kind of work that you do? I mean, you're not on the mountain bike directly finding the homeless kids. You're a step back. What keeps you going?
So I think that's the point, is to not take that step back. I was just at our New Beginnings program a few weeks ago. We held a fundraising event there, and the moms and babies were right there, and they were talking about the program, and I was talking with them, and I got to see their kids and their interaction between them and their kids, and to see them have the ability to provide positive parenting for their youth, and to see the staff interaction with those youth and mentoring and coaching. And they would not be concentrating on their child if they were still homeless. They would be concentrating on finding a house, being safe. So actually staying connected to the youth is one of my top priorities. I always want to stay in focus, and I know the youth and families keep me in focus. So
it is keeping that personal connection for
totally
you
is.
of who you serve and
Absolutely.
what they're. Valley Youth House, I mentioned at the beginning, now some 350 employees, right? And a dozen centers. You had to tick off where a few of those centers are. I don't know if people know how wide your service area is, but it's grown enormously in these 40 years or so, or nearly 40 years that it. What's behind all that growth? Just growth in the population of neglected and homeless youth, or the withdrawal of other agencies? What's behind all that growth?
So I think a few things. One, we offer quality services, and people recognize that. So oftentimes we are actually invited into new locations to be able to provide those services for the county. For example, that happened in Lancaster. We're all the way out there providing services to young adults in transition. And we were invited out there because they understood and knew the positive outcomes in the quality programs. I would say that for older adolescents that are either aging out of the foster care system and or have been homeless, there has been a huge understanding that those youth, in order to be successful, need help. And if they don't have family help, somebody needs to be there. And we have proven that we can be there for those youth. We can provide support services in a quality way. We can partner with them, and that they can reach self-sufficiency with our help and ultimately be a productive member of society. And the really cool thing is that they keep coming back to the staff. So there's a connection, a longevity in a relationship that sometimes they don't have with their families, that they then connect with the staff, which is the ultimate reward you get for offering quality services and a true connection that the youth need. So.
And the geographic range of Valley Youth House is well, mention a few of the places where you're serving now.
So we have services in Luzerne, we have services in York and Lancaster, we have services in Philadelphia, Delaware County, Montgomery County, Chester County.
We mentioned Bucks County.
Bucks County,
yes.
Absolutely. And certainly our inception is right here in Lehigh Valley, in Easton, Bethlehem, and Allentown. So, absolutely.
So almost, actually, anybody watching tonight, you have services in all of those places. And when I think of Valley Youth House, I think many people do. It's your shelter or group homes, or how do you refer to that as sort of your banner? How do you refer to that? Do you use group home now, or shelter, or what is your?
I think a lot of it is residential services. So we talk about one component of Valley Youth House is residential. Another component, though, that is large and we truly believe in is prevention. We really believe that if we can catch those youth and the families, and we can keep them intact and provide quality services to the whole family while the youth is there, we can fix the problem.
Well, let's after this break, I want to talk about both the residential services and the prevention. Wow, who wouldn't be wanting to see great prevention services? So if you stay tuned, you can hear about some models that are really working. Welcome back. I'm Reverend Bill Kunze, and this is Annette Duranso. She is the new president and CEO of Valley Youth House. And again, just before the break, I started mentioning, of course, what I've been actually closest in touch with is the residential services, shelter services. I wonder if you'd talk about this a bit. I'm especially interested in how such a shelter program differs from one for adults and families, which we normally associate with sheltering.
Right. So that's interesting. I think that sometimes we do have families that go into shelter, but maybe the children are not there. So oftentimes we will sometimes get the youth where their parents are in a different shelter.
Oh,
The
yes.
residential adolescent shelter that we provide services for now are for the ages of 11 to about 18. Sometimes we can extend that age. It's short-term crisis oriented.
So how long is short term?
Usually 21 days. Sometimes we'll go up to 30 depending on what that youth particularly needs and what their plan is. The ultimate goal is to get that youth back with their family. That's what we want. If there's services we can put into place, we're going to do that. If we can go out and talk to the family, we're going to do that. If we can bring the family in, absolutely. It's really to provide supportive services, and then not just to fix the crisis in the moment while the youth is at the shelter, but to provide services thereafter so that they don't have to come back to the shelter, but that they have other resources available to them to get them connected to those other services, whether it's counseling services, if it's housing, if it's school, whatever that might be. That's our job, is to make sure that family feels supported and that youth is okay and the youth is safe.
And you have a rather high success rate at reuniting these homeless youth with their families, right?
We absolutely do. It's one of the reasons why I really believe in Valley Youth House and why I came here from the federal government. I knew the positive outcomes. I knew the high rates of safe discharge. We talk about a youth and are they safe when they leave, and we keep those statistics because we want to know that when a youth leaves they are safe, and it is above the national average, which makes not only us feel positive about the programs we're providing, it makes our staff so much more empowered to provide those services. And families also understand that we're there to ensure their youth is safe as well, because for some of those parents it's extremely anxiety driven to know that their child is in a shelter, even if it's what they need at that particular moment, because there's family dynamics going on that need to be worked out.
Seems to me, last time I looked it up, you were at something like an 89% success
Yeah, I would
rate?
think we're in the 90s now,
90?
but I'll take 89. That's still
It's
very
remarkable.
high. Absolutely.
I mean, that's remarkable.
Yeah.
Now, so most youth will go back to their families?
Most youth do.
Where might, if it's a family situation you
Mm-hmm.
can't bring back together, where might the other 8 or 10% go?
Right. So we look at multiple avenues. Maybe it's not the primary family that they would go to, the parents or the guardians. It might be an aunt or an uncle that's able to work with that youth for a particular time until maybe mom or dad gets the rest of their ducks in an order, if you will. Sometimes, though, it's unfortunately not able to be worked out, and they might need to go into the custody of child welfare. We work really closely with them to have that transition be seamless, if you will. And that's not what we want, but ultimately our goal above everything else is safety. And if it means that that youth needs to go into custody for a little while to be safe, then that's ultimately what we'll do.
With that high success rate that you have, it really means that Valley Youth House is a national model, right, for others to be looking at. So how about the non-residential services you provide? You want to talk about some of those? I know once before we had a long conversation when Camp Fowler opened. What else? What have you got cooking?
Great. So this is the fun part. So we start out with prevention services, which I had mentioned earlier, around keeping those youth in the family, working intensely with them, sometimes every single day, in order to keep the family and the youth intact. We have residential short-term crisis, which I talked about a little bit earlier. We also have behavioral health, which sometimes doesn't get as much attention as it needs to, but that's really for families and or youth who have been diagnosed with some type of behavioral health issue, and we work intensely with them. Therapist goes to the home, case manager goes to the home, and again, it's really about keeping that family safe and healthy and connecting them to other resources as well as providing therapy. And then we go to the older adolescents and we provide independent living services, which is most of our...
What does that mean?
That means that when a youth has either transitioned out of foster care and or is homeless, and they're between usually the ages of 16 to about 21, 22, we will provide housing, we will provide coaching and mentoring, we'll provide food, we teach you about budgeting, we get you hooked up with educational services if you want to go on to college. We have many of our students that are in school, secondary education, employment services. We kind of help you develop a life map, if you will. And those services can be offered for up to 18 months, sometimes up to 22, 24 months. But it provides the adolescent really a time of stable housing, to get their life in order. Maybe they haven't had time to breathe before because their situation was so crisis driven. They can actually sit back, take a breath, develop strong relationships with staff, develop some of those trusting relationships, and move forward in a goal of being a productive member of society.
And I don't know if we can bring them up, but you even brought some pictures of some of these innovative programs that you do through the camp and so on.
Absolutely.
Who is that for?
Okay, so we have
Camp. Look wild.
It's very cool. So we have Camp Fowler. We take youth out to our camp, and I'm remiss to know how many acres, but it's extremely large. We have zip lining, we have a pool, we have a clubhouse, we have cabins, and we do all these ropes course. And it's really about, first of all, the
Am I going to see you up there one of these days? Well,
my staff would like to see that, I think. Yes. So, but it's really a place for the youth to breathe. Some of them haven't been out of Philadelphia, the city. They go out there and they can really kind of experience lots of things that they haven't. And many times we really concentrate on talk therapy, if you will, but there's lots of other modes that we all know we use to decrease our stress. And sometimes it's just having fun. And Camp Fowler provides fun.
For who?
For the youth, for the staff, for the community.
And sort of economically, age-wise, I mean, what kids get into that?
So it's any kids that we serve. So in an annual basis, we serve over 11,000 youth a year. So any of those youth could come and use the camp. Our staff use the camp. We rent the camp out. If there's anybody interested in utilizing the camp, they can certainly contact us. We would be more than happy to talk with them about renting it out to them for the day. It's one of the ways that we're able to fundraise and to keep our quality of programs at the standard in which they're at. We're very creative with being able to, support our services. So the camp allows us to be able to utilize it and others in the community.
I'm thinking of now. You're new in the position, Annette. What is your vision? Where do you when we look back 5 years from now when you're here again? How will we see your stamp on sort of Valley Youth House? I guess it sort of must fit the trends you see happening with the population you serve. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? I'm going to hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah, I know. So I better be careful. So I think a couple things. One is we do our services so well, so how can we explain to others how we do it? And that's tricky, but I think we can do that through research-based programs. And I think teaching others how well we do things is the key, and providing trainings. We are so innovative with our trainings of our staff, and we put a lot of time and effort into that. I think there's a national place for us. We've grown within Pennsylvania. We will continue to grow in Pennsylvania and other places, I would say. In 5 years, you can hold me to that. We'll be at more sites than we are now. But I also see us on a national stage doing research-based programs and providing training and technical assistance to others that are providing services similar as ours.
Kind of sharing your expertise and gifts
Absolutely.
with others. I know that your work is really expensive work to provide high quality, good services for people. I'm almost afraid to ask in today's environment, but what's the financial future look like?
To be able to provide the kinds of services we do now, the cost keeps going up, but we don't seem to have the amount of money coming in, but we keep our quality of services. So there's always a gap between how much our services cost, meaning how much we pay for staff and those types of things, which predominantly we're paying for high quality staff to provide those services, and then how much we're able to get, whether it's from the county or state or foundations or from the federal government. So there's that gap that we always need to fill, and it continues to grow, unfortunately. So we have to come up with creative ways to fill that gap so that our quality of services does not diminish.
And some of those creative ways are?
Well, we certainly rent out our camp, so I'll give another plug to that because it's an amazing place. We also have events that we hold every year. We also ask people for donations. We have an amazing board of directors that is very supportive of us. We have amazing corporations within the Lehigh Valley that has been very, very generous. but we always need time, talent, and treasure from others. And
What kind of time? So are there volunteer opportunities at Valley Youth House?
Absolutely. So mentoring is always a big thing. We have our youth that are aging out. They could always utilize someone to help coach them, help connect them with employment opportunities, help them in the educational system. So we're always looking for people to be able to help in that particular way. We can always use help beautifying our shelters. If you love gardening, we would certainly love for you to, help us.
Too.
Absolutely. Or cooking. If you have a particular passion, we can always match your passion with a need at Valley Youth House. We're a huge organization. We have lots of needs and lots of youth that have lots of ideas. So if we can match your passion with some of the services we're providing, that's our job.
And it's neat to see your passion matched with the needs of this population and the pain that seems to be in there. So you got about 30 seconds. You want a last word?
I would just say Valley Youth House is an amazing organization. If you don't know about our organization, you can go to our website, www.valleyyouthhouse.org, and we would be more than happy to help you.
And it'd be a great place for you to volunteer at if you share Annette's passion, or to send some financial support that's really needed in these times. We thank you for joining us tonight at Taking the Initiative, and I'm here every week, this time, this place, and stay tuned for more Positively Different television.